I've been waiting too long. I've been waiting too long. I've been waiting too long. I've been waiting too long for no more. I can't look past it. Nothing at all. Nothing to mask it, but it feels so drastic. But I cannot panic, so I get my chance to throw and hit that fucking road. I've been waiting too long.
Hello everybody, and let's do a quick test. Can you hear me? Can you see me? And of course, is everything all right? So welcome to our next webinar. This is our third webinar from series about exteriors. So I'm hoping to see a little bit of progress today. Some of you started working on multiple interiors at the same time, so that is very admirable. And I must say that, well, I'm actually expecting a lot of interesting stuff today. Dobar večer. Dobar večer. I'm not Russian, so I cannot really read that. But anyway, guys, hello. Again, this is our very important, as always actually, webinar, because today we're going to talk a little bit about scatters. So scatters are pretty much the systems that we use to populate our scenes with grass and everything else. We're not going to go into detail about it during the webinar, but I'm going to show you a little bit of tricks that we're going to pull off, and of course how to deal with some objects that you just need to use to populate your scene, and sometimes it's just, well, not really easy. Anyway, let's just try to do it. Let's just try to do it as quick as possible. So let's get into our exteriors. Andrea, we're past our inspiration picking, so you just need to make up your mind at this moment, because right now we're expecting some progress. If you still haven't made up your mind, we're not going to go through inspirations at this moment, maybe if we have enough time, but at this point we just need to see progress. So without any further ado, let's jump to another folder. Quickly gonna tell you that this is really good. So now let's go on and visit Demetra's folder. Hello, Andrea. Okay, let's do a quick comparison of your progress. Demetra was one of those guys, students that really struggled to make up her mind. She changed a lot of exteriors, and in the end, she picked really good thing. I mean, this is a really good exterior to start with. You can see that we have those pretty, let's say, organized elements that are scattered all over the scene. And we're going to learn how to do that, because just copying those objects one by one is not going to be fun. That's why we're going to use scatters for that. And at this moment, it looks really good. As for the start, I would say that we cannot really add anything more. I mean, the camera alignment looks really perfect, so just continue, go on. Great job. So I'm expecting a bit more effects from you quite soon, as you started as a really experienced user. So of course, let's see your works now, because I'm hoping to see those final renders. I was actually hoping that you're going to add them in here, and well, they're gone. Anyway, as soon as you can, you should add them back. And now, Donald, what do we have here? Donald reported that a newest Corona version has a little bit of bugs and it actually crashes his system. So if you will experience the same problems, please contact the Corona support as soon as possible. Those guys are going to help you out and pretty much tell you how to avoid this problem or how to fix it, because it is possible that it's just that you need to reinstall the Corona 0.5, but in some cases it's just that it's just bugged. It's the newest version, so maybe you caught some kind of bug that they haven't dealt with yet. So try to pretty much help them out to solve it. And then in reality, sometimes they do give out some kind of prizes for finding really crucial bugs. As for the modeling part, flawless. I just cannot say anything else. This element here is going to be quite problematic, which we should probably do easier slope around here, because just doing this way is going to create a bit of a problem. But as you can see, we have this quite nice slope and ease into this water, so we may want to do the same here. But comparing the two of those models, seriously, this is really great. But I see that you actually are working on some other design, I guess. No worries. Oh, I get it, you're doing those. So yeah, that actually makes sense. So just continue working on it. So far looking great, so definitely you have some skill in modeling. Definitely you should probably start selling your models. Okay, looks great. Nothing really to add. Now we could try to look for more photos from the same exterior and try to align a camera to allow you to do a wider shot or even extra shots. But from the modeling standpoint, I would say that, again, outstanding work, really great job. So just continue doing it. Definitely, you should, if you have enough time, you can start your third exterior, because honestly, you're doing great. Okay, so anything new, Donald, in your finals or anything like that? By the way, guys, if you did add some finals, please give me a heads up. So I'm just going to quickly go through the folders and see exactly what we're looking for. Okay, the white render looks good. I like this difference between the light tone. If you want to add a little bit more dramatic feel to your scene, try to add just a hint of bluish light in it, so that it actually creates this contrast between this warm and a little bit colder colors. But looking great, looking just great. This is actually starting to look really realistic. Go easier on this glossiness map, just a hint, just a subtle effect is enough. Try to mix it, blur it, or use a little bit noise with it as a bump, so it's going to create more reflections. But this is actually starting to look good, especially in the far away elements are really looking good. Those bricks definitely need a little bit more love, like those carpets that we mentioned in previous webinars. But guys, you definitely need to just consider how much detail Eric is putting in here. Just take a note that he actually bothered to make those UVWs different, and that is always a really great thing to do. Thanks to this, those elements, even though they are repeating like many times, you cannot really see the pattern, especially that the pattern was broken thanks to those extra objects in here. That's really great thinking. Okay, so now let's continue. And as for exterior 1, Okay, you've actually managed to create really decent model. At this point, you definitely need to start working on another one. This is looking great. What else can I say? Nothing. It's just great. So the thing is that this group is doing so well that I'm just going from one folder to another to praise you, but usually it is supposed to be the moment when I give you some hints on how to do stuff and how to add elements to your scene. But since you're doing so good, I'm a little bit out of options. As for trees like this, you can use this distance map to make sure that no grass is going to grow around it, or you can use bevel to cut out this shape for it. But definitely looking great. I started an exterior with materials, but it's rubbish, so don't worry about okay, I'm still going to look at your folder. So Clary, we definitely need to see that. Still, you've got that second interior that you haven't finished, and we still can pretty much try to produce the final render from your first inspiration. Hey, this is looking good. This is actually starting to look good. We definitely need to model out the balcony. It's going to be crucial, so it's going to reflect the light. But right now, we're not going to focus on interiors during our webinars. But this is actually a really good progress. I would say that I love this effect. This is going to be a little bit more subtle in the final render, but the thing that is happening here is going to look really great. So yeah, continue, just go on, definitely. Still gonna need to work a bit more on the HDRI part, but still looking good. As for your exterior, yes, definitely needs a little bit more modeling, but at this point, I would say that you are actually doing quite good. There are still some parts missing. For this logs inside, beneath this house, we're going to use scatter, so don't try to manually place them because it would take you a little bit too much time. And overall, the snow, when you add it in, it's going to look good. So just carry on, continue. You're actually doing quite well. So this model still doesn't look great, but it's because it doesn't have the environment. It's still best to render it out in the white mode up until we finish this whole thing with all the scatters. We don't move on to our materials yet. It's just that at this point, we're just doing the white renders. So that would be the best idea at this moment. So let's go back to Eric's folder. We've got only one exterior so far. I'm just desperately looking for something to give you hints on. Maybe this could be actually addressed. I see some problems around here with the mesh. So if you could do some close-ups on this area, remember leaving this holes like this, it's not really a good idea. So you may want to fix that as well. As for the rest, it looks good. So I guess you actually know what you're doing. Okay, so the tracing is really great. Your sky also looks okay. You actually haven't changed a lot. So yeah, looks good. Definitely continue working on it. We're just going to have to add a little bit detail here and there. Probably a little bit of round edges on this element here, but overall really great job, Eric. Okay, so one question: do you have to do the interiors? Do you have to do the interiors? Not really. Don't go for the full interior for this shot. I wouldn't really create the interior as much as just add in the free models that you can find. Always remember that if an item is going to take a little bit less space in your computer in your scene than let's say 5%, this is actually a really small percentage. All of those items could be substituted with free models with probably better materials. So don't stress it and just try to use any kind of means of any models that you can. Now I've got this quite easy scene that is actually an interior, and I wanted to show you something that is very important for exterior shots. If you, let's say, try to create an exterior using high polygon, high count models like this, so this is not a good idea. Why? Because most of the time using models like this, you're going to view them from distance, and this is pretty much what you will see. Proxying them out is still going to be an option, but it's not really ideal. Why? Because we still have a lot of polygons and quite a lot of render time on our hands. So what we can do instead is use something called Pro Optimizer. So there are many ways in 3ds Max to optimize your scene, but this is one of the best for your exteriors. So when dealing with interiors, you may want to avoid this, but within exteriors, this is a really neat thing to do. So first of all, I'm going to ungroup this object. So I actually have this cylinder. Just look at those cylinders. This is just silly to add so many polygons for exterior. So let's try to address this. Okay, so I created this model. Now we have those two options, right? Next step is going to be, I'm just going to add something that is going to be used as our environment map. So let's just see how does this model look like. So this is pretty much the HDRI that I'm using, so this is not the scene. It's just some kind of living room that I use for my materials to make sure that they actually look as realistic as possible. At this moment, this is going to look quite silly, but let's just try to avoid getting into the details. So again, I'm going to go for perspective mode and let's look around. Those two chairs look quite okay, but I'm still not into it. I mean, they do not look great. So still, looking at them from far away like this is going to be, well, you're not going to see any kind of detail in it. So what we can do about it, we can use Pro Optimizer that I mentioned briefly. Remember that sometimes Pro Optimizer is going to crash your 3ds Max, especially if you leave your interactive render on. So before you actually add any changes to it, stop your interactive render, add Pro Optimizer from your modifier to your modifier stock. Now it's Pro Optimizer. What you want to click is keep textures. This is very important step. And now we calculate our mesh. You want to do a single objects as well, probably one object at a time, especially if it has a lot of vertices. At this moment, this actually doesn't have that much. It's only 51,000 polygons, vertices. But let's make this 10 times less. Let's try to make this actually 5,000, and let's see what's happening to our model. First of all, it's getting optimized. So some of the bugs are actually showing, and let's just play around with it. Now we started from 100%, so it looks like this. And now we're just going to gradually decrease the amount of polygons that we're going to use. This is a technique that you want to use for exteriors. Sometimes you can go as low for 1% and you're still not going to see almost any difference. So for that, I'm going to copy this object, which is going to be very helpful because now I can do the 10%, 1%, and full model. So now we see all of them. Let's start the interactive render and see the difference. So the 1% does look really weird. It lost a lot of detail. It doesn't reflect well, but 10% is still looking almost identical to the 100%, and we are actually saving 10 times the vertices that we had. So again, let's look at them from far away. Now, you cannot really tell any difference between 1%, 10%, and 100%. Unless you actually are looking for some problems with this model, you won't really tell any difference. So 1% is just 500 vertices. Just imagine how well it would work in your scene. Of course, this model is totally useless for your interiors right now, so you may want to create a copy before you save your files like this, but it is very, very helpful. So just to make this a little bit better, 2% versus 10% and 100%. Can you see any difference? I honestly can't. Yes, the reflections are a bit different, but it's due to the HDRI itself. So you know now that when you are working with exteriors, always optimize your objects, especially if you don't want to proxy them out. If you are going to create a ridiculously high resolution images, well, you may want to skip this part or at least keep your objects at 10%, but this is a very important element for the interiors. And now let's continue, and since you have a lot of stuff in here, you don't want to add 2 gigabytes in here, you just want to add 500 or let's say 10,000 vertices overall, and they will render out as fast as the full model. I mean, faster than the full model. So why waste time? It's just going to take you 10 seconds to recalculate this, and it's going to be okay. Always remember to collapse your object in the end into editable poly or editable mesh, because once you save your scene and your cache is cleared out, this calculation is going to be cleared out as well. So you want to click, right click, collapse all, and yes. You may also convert this to editable poly. It's going to have exactly the same effect, but yeah, this is definitely going to be helpful. 10%, 100%, okay, enough of that. Great work, definitely continue working and probably start your second exterior. This is actually going great. Or you can finish this interior in actually. So it's going to, well, it's up to you. So now, great work, Eric. Definitely great work. Katerina, I have a question about proxy. Can you modify it once you make the proxy? Yes, you still can edit your proxied out objects, and to do that, all you need to do is, let's actually proxy this object out, so you're going to see what I mean. First of all, we need to export this, so let's just put it somewhere. Okay, so now it's proxied out. I'm not sure if I closed my interactive render, so it's possible that my 3ds Max is going to crash now. It didn't. So now you probably thought that it's going to be a good idea to go to full mesh and try to add changes here. No, what you need to do is, first of all, make this a unique object, because if you're going to work with, let's say, hundreds of instances, this is going to cause you a little bit of problems. Very important, so just try to note this, because this is very important. Now we have a lot of chairs like this, so if we add any changes or click on anything at all, we're going to get the same result with each of those instances. That's why we don't want to work on instance for this. We want to work on one object. So let's just go for wire bonding box. And now what you need to do is press duplicate to mesh. So once we do, it's going to create this mesh, just pretty much bring it in. But if you don't click on this modifier stock on the Corona proxy and click on make unique, this is super important. This is going to happen. You're going to be, well, all of your proxies are going to load this model, and you'll be left with a lot of problems because now you have to manually grab all of them and delete them. Just imagine if you add trees or bush or whatever, just heavy mesh, and you instantly load them all. This is going to probably crash your Macs or at least clog it for half an hour. So now remember to before you actually click on this, let's select all of them, delete, and make this change. So make unique. Now we can actually duplicate this to mesh, and then once we have this as a mesh, you add your changes, you change your mapping, you do whatever you like. What you can do now is, again, export this object and override the previous proxy. So all of those proxies are going to be updated. Still, it's going to be a little bit of a problem because those proxies are no longer going to be connected to one another. So, I mean, this proxy is not connected to this proxy. So it means that it's best to proxy out this object and then create a copy. So you're going to probably figure it out, but just try to follow the steps. Again, continuing to Katerina's folder, we're going to have a small clash because not only Katerina picked this inspiration, so I hope that you actually don't mind this, but wow, this is actually looking great. Great modeling. I need to tell you that this is actually looking really great. Look at this mesh. There's a lot of vertices in here and only 500,000 polygons. This is how you can work with exteriors. It's not a problem if you add a little bit more to your mesh. It's okay. Just don't go crazy. Just try to delete what you don't need, just like Katerina did. Just look at this. There's a lot of objects that we deleted because we didn't need them. Right now, we just are not going to create extra shots. If we would probably keep this, but since we're not, we can just tag along and just ignore this for now. Anyway, as I was saying, great model, looks amazing. I guess you created those as a groups. I mentioned that we're going to use scatter for this, but it's not a problem. Nice, looks clean, really great. Great mood. So again, we just need to start adding a little bit of detail inside. So keep modeling. Great. This is looking great. Want to play with snow a little bit more to achieve more rough result? Well, then add displacement and add more noise. You may want to work a little bit more with your bumps. But so far looking amazing. This is actually looking great. This is exactly what I wanted to see with your homework. So at this point, really great work. I love this light. I love how it showers this snow. Looking great. Definitely amazing work. So as for your turbidity, yes, this is going to be okay. You may want to increase it just a bit later on, but not at the moment, because we're going to work with sun and sky, so we're going to try to balance it out. There is no one recipe for this, but sometimes your clients are going to ask you to create the specific mood at the specific day. You're probably going to want to at least know how to do that. Małgorzata, what do we have here? Great work, nice modeling, amazing. So let's continue. Looking great. Needs a little bit more contrast overall as a setting in your video frame buffer, but at this moment this is looking sharp, actually looking sharp. Bit too sharp actually. Since you're using your floor generator for those blanks, why not add a little bit of variety to it? If you want to add those extra nails to your objects, we can actually do it as a separate map using layers with different mapping channel, or we can actually scatter out those as many times as we like. So both of those options are going to be okay, but we still need to decide on one. This is actually making me a little bit uneasy, this is making me a bit dizzy. Definitely there's something going on with this picture, and I don't know what it is. But the modeling is really on point. So great job. Interior old stuff final renders. I'm always hoping to see some more action there, so if you want, you can play around a bit more. Mario, so interior, exterior. Okay, so reference, okay, part second, okay. At this point, I'm a little bit lost. That's why I would like you to add the newest stuff in here, guys, because once I get into your own system, it's going to be a bit harder for me. I mean, it's going to take a little bit longer than I would like it to actually take us. So to avoid wasting time, please try to add the newest stuff just in your folder as we enter it, okay, in the first level. So as for the light, looks good. Model probably is going to require a bit more work, but let's actually compare it to your inspiration, and there's none. So always add your inspiration inside of this shot, because we just need to make sure that we're looking at both of them at the same time. Without it, we can pretty much guess what is wrong or what is right, but you get the you get the point. So yeah, looking good so far. The light system works, so great job. As for the modeling part, I would say that yes, still looking good. You actually managed to fix this those tiles, so great job. Yeah, continue working. Today we're going to talk about scatters, so that's why I'm just trying to glance over your shots, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. Definitely interesting group. Okay, so now what do we have here? This is actually still not finished, so I guess you focused a little bit more on your second shot, but don't you guys have any questions? Like, really? I mean, you had like 3 questions overall about the camera positioning, because sometimes you have a little bit of problems, but in the modeling part you're all like aces, like doing it great. So great job, guys. I'm really glad that you're doing so well. So carry on. Okay, now let's go back a bit. Miroslava, what do we have here? Missing the stone and started the second. Okay, so you probably want to avoid adding this as floor generator object. You may want to use this as a diffuse texture by going to HDRI Heaven. So let's just, okay, sorry. HDRI Heaven has its sister site, which is Texture Heaven, and here we have a little bit of those bricks, and of course we have pavements and roads. So we can just try to work with those and try to look for something that is going to be suitable for us. In most of the cases, you won't find exactly what you need. So to not waste points or cash on objects that are not really crucial for your scene, you may want to visit this, go to the floor section, and download one of those textures. Those are going to look good, and they have already this diffuse displacement map. Everything is there, so this is just going to be easier this way. I was going to use floor generator. Yeah, that's why we have these lessons. You can change the pattern, but don't overstress it. I mean, you may want to try to make it look good, but just use something like cobblestone or bricks, whatever. Just don't waste too much time on it. It's not worth it. At this point, we just want to grab it, create what we need, and move on, because there's still a lot of stuff to explore, especially with the scatters at hand. So for these textures, just use one of them. Actually, all of you guys try to use this as much as you can. Also, remember about those terrain maps. Those are super helpful. The snow itself doesn't look that good, but all the rest is going to look great, especially in situations like this where you have some kind of sand going inside of a lake, wink wink. So yeah, just use this, because this is actually at your disposal. This map was no, not this one. Very similar map was used during our open webinar. So you've seen the effects. This is how you can do it, and this is going to be a really good thing as an add-on to your scatters. Should I use that as well for the gravel? Definitely. The gravel is scattering the gravel is going to clog your system. So probably you want to at least create some kind of texture and try to scatter it out. We have questions, but I guess they're better discussed on Skype group. Okay, it's okay. Any insight on substance textures? Substance, yes, definitely. If you can, use them. Those are amazing, especially if you use Substance Mixer, Substance Designer, Substance everything. Quixel is just amazing, and I must say that Quixel has the best options for all of you guys. So we've got the Mega Scans and the Quixel Mixer, and of course the Substance Designer. Here you can find almost anything that you like in 3D, 2D, and it's going to be photorealistic. Just plug it in, use it. Thank you. This is all. There's a lot of stuff that you may want to look for, like foliage and extra plants, just everything. Just pretty much anything that you want is going to be there, because those guys are super amazing. It's hard to stress enough how good their models and overall quality of the materials they produce is. So if you want to go step on even another level, you may want to use those things in your shots. So those of you that have those three trunks in the first shot may want to go for scanned barks. First visit the let's say Sketchfab to see if there's something that you may salvage for free. But most of the time it's not going to be that useful. So if you go for 3 downloadable, there's a lot of stuff that you can download, because somebody was just hiking and somebody seen this nice tree trunk or whatever, and well, he decided to do a scan, and this is downloadable. You can pretty much add it as an extra in your shot somewhere in the background to make this look a little bit more realistic. And yeah, this is going to look tremendously good, especially that those files are going to be downloadable. If you click on download, you of course need to probably log in first, but you can see it. You probably need to clean it up a little bit, and don't use this in your foreground. Probably this is going to be best used for backgrounds, but yeah, you get the point. That snowy log would suit, yeah, probably. Anyway, I digress. Let's move back to actually our folders. Okay, need to close all of those. Modeling looks great. You actually can use the map from Textures Heaven. Just do it. Just go for it. It's going to be amazing. Just do it. It's going to be fast. Use floor generator for this object, and of course this fence. Tree like this. Just add in any tree. Delete the leaves and just cut out the branches, desaturate it, or find a scan. This is going to be really easy, so I hope that you're going to finish your second exterior quickly, because I noticed that you already know that it's going to be a bit faster than with the interiors. By the way, guys, how is the comparison between interiors and exteriors? I mean, in my case, I think that exteriors require a bit less work overall, but in the end they render longer because there's a lot of greens in it, and we just need to take a bit more time to work on it. Nathan, I guess we already seen this, but we haven't seen that. Okay, somebody went ahead and well, great work. What? Great work. This is almost finished. So now today we're learning about scatters. So buckle up, because once you add scatters to your scene, this is pretty much it. You actually need to start your second exterior. Definitely do that. Nathan, this is amazing. This is a really great job. So how is your experience with the exteriors so far, guys? Exteriors are more difficult for me. Exteriors seem to be easier for now. I think that easier than interiors. Yeah, definitely. Theodore, we're going to have to make this fear of exteriors go away, because at this moment I don't really think that it's anyway harder. It's just that we need to make sure that we can how to say that, we can guide you through this whole process to, okay, great. This is not yet the final, I think, but this is looking good. Renamed item. Okay, so we already seen this, but I like it. I really do. So Theodore, let's see your exterior. First of all, the exterior you took on is very ambitious. It requires a lot of good textures, and it's going to be quite problematic actually. So you pretty much brought this on yourself, but at the same time we just need to take the challenges. So as for your questions about the bricks, I don't think that you necessarily have to add a lot more variety. Maybe the tiling is visible around here, but it's definitely not visible in this area. So we can try to add a little bit of noise, a little bit of extra textures, and mix them together to create extra patterns. So we actually avoid adding unnecessary patterns, and we can pretty much rotate some of those textures. Mirror them, or just use them as a little bit more tiles. So this is actually not that complex, but still requires a bit of explanation. but as the lighting, as the whole scenery, it looks amazing. In the end, I'm going to still show you a bit more about the light mix as I promised, but it looks amazing, so great job. So far I cannot really put my finger on it. I mean, there's nothing I would say that this model is missing. Maybe probably this element would need a bit of chamfering. I'm not sure what's happening here. Definitely try to rescale your bricks a bit. At this moment, all of your textures are a bit too compact, so that's why we see this pattern. And in your inspiration, the bricks seem to be a bit bigger, in my opinion, so you may want to change that. Model wise, looks great. I don't have anything else to add, really. So carry on, looks good, and well, I hope to see a lot of shots from you, because I know that you work with exteriors as well. Okay, come on, you're already there. I must say that please wait with adding trees. We're not working with trees yet. For now, go to your 3ds Max, select those objects, and try to do it like that. File, save, selected. So select the trees, save selected, save them on a separate file. Don't hide them, because right now using the mesh is going to clog your system for a while. So now when you save them, delete them. We're going to re-import them later on, but for now just skip the trees, at least for up until the next lesson, okay? So without any further ado, let's just move on. This is looking great. The bevel is definitely too strong. It looks well, quite like a tile, so yeah, definitely needs to be fixed. Okay, you fixed it on your own. As for this type of shadow, to achieve it, you need a good sun, and in this case, to get it, you need to set the proper size of your sun per se. So let's just try to go through this process. First of all, if we have some kind of objects in our scene and we want to project some kind of shadow, and we want this shadow to actually be sharp, first of all, use not HDRI, unless you have a perfect HDRI for that. Use Corona Sky. That's the first step. And your second step is to add Corona Sun. With all that out of the way, we can just start producing some shadows. Okay, maybe not yet. I mean now. So we have this sharp shadow that we want to use. Remember, if you're actually going to learn this, but I can also mention it now. If you're going to have a situation like this where something similar to Yiting's situation, where you barely see any elements of the tree and you just want to cast this shadow, you probably want to add a shadowy object. What do I mean? Let's just add an object which is going to be used as our shadow caster. So let's go for a plane, auto grid, just to avoid the rotation. I'm just feeling lazy now. Now we have this object. I'm pretty sure that some of you already figured it out, but we're still going to do it. Now we have, let's say, this situation like Yiting has, and let's say that she wants to add this shadow. Okay, this looks good, but now we only have this planar object and not much of it, right? So let's just add this ground. Okay, we want to create Corona material for that, and of course we need Corona material editor now. So let's add Corona material, I'm going to add this one to all the objects, so those are going to look a little bit more white. And now, since we have this camera still unplugged, you can pretty much see what's going on in here. So what are we going to do now? We're just going to use opacity map to make this into a 3. So let's go for Corona bitmap. This is going to be another super easy and super fun thing to work with. What I mean by this, it's easy to find any textures online like this, but let me just go through some of my nature textures and let me just look for some kind of 3. So I've got this 3 straight from the Google, nothing really special. You can see that it's just a 3. You may want to find, it is possible that you're going to find a PNG file. In this case, you need a little bit a different approach. So if it's a transparent background PNG file, it's probably going to look like this. This one doesn't really have the transparent background, I guess, so we cannot really use this. That's why you need to work with black and white objects, or you need to work with objects without the background. So let me just open this in. Yeah, this actually doesn't have background. So now we're going to use this texture, and you either want to change this in Photoshop into black and white texture, as I did around here. So it's just black and white texture, easy to use, fast to work with. Or you can go for Corona bitmap, and if it is a PNG file with transparent background, what you need to do is go for mono and image alpha. This is super important because without it, our trick is not going to work with PNG file. In most of the cases, it's going to work with black and white files without it, but now let's add it to our PNG file. You can see that now the 3 is, well, not casting the shadow that we expected. It's actually doing the opposite. So instead, we're going to change this mono to image alpha. Now, this is how you do it. Now we have this beautiful shadow that costs us almost no render time because it's just a plane. And to make sure that it's going to render even faster, you want to click on this clip. It's not going to create any kind of visible effects at this moment, but it's going to cut out all the unnecessary elements of this map, like gradients, making it just a black and white map, purely black or purely white map, leaving this a little bit easier to work with for 3ds Max. And now we can just work with the shadow as much as we like, because it's going to be fast and easy. Just moving 3s, it could be a little bit more problematic because those actually weigh a lot. So this is actually going to also be very helpful for your interiors, because you may want to add this effect from time to time to your interiors, where you have this beautiful shadows from the trees forming. And if you just want to add a bit more effect to it, you can create multiple trees and just move them around like that. So this is going to be very helpful. You can already see that this is actually forming some kind of composition. So your RAM is going to really love this effect. Cool tutorial and the workaround. My RAM improves. Okay, great. So is that what I can use for my first sunny inspiration? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Okay, now let's go back to this. At this moment, this sky looks bad. You definitely need to check this out, fix this, and we need to check all the settings. So at this moment, let's stick to the white renders, or we can start working actually on your materials. It's not a problem at this moment. You actually know what you're doing, guys. The white render looks great. but try to use this technique that I shown you to create the shadows, so it's going to be a bit faster to render. Okay, so you started your extra projects, and as I said, it's going to be easier and faster each time you start new projects. Remember to download objects like this. There's a lot of companies that allow you to download it, like Coleman or pretty much any company right now. And 3D Sky, definitely visit 3D Sky for models like this. There's a ton of them for free. Great job, amazing progress, Yiting. I would say that I'm really happy with your current results. So now, as I was saying, we're going to talk a bit about our Corona scatter. So this is going to be a quick introduction. Corona scatter can be found in creation panel and not in compound objects, but in Corona objects. So we have this Corona scatter. It pretty much divides into two sections: distribute on objects and distributed objects. So now let's go for a quick tutorial. You're getting the video on it, so let's not get into the details at this moment, because it's just going to be redundant to hear the same thing twice. So we're going to distribute on this object, and we're going to use this as our instance object. Voila, we scattered out 1 million of teapots. What you need to remember about scatters is that those are going to use your whole mesh. That means that unless you add some kind of restrictions with maps or other means, your objects are going to be fully populated with your scatters. So as you can see, if you create a box that is supposed to be your ground, you're going to have a bad time, because you're going to waste a lot of your precious energy on producing stuff like this, and you probably want to avoid that. Teapots aren't really that exciting, but once we add multiple maps to it, so let's just add multi-map, which is super convenient to work with. So Corona multi-map. And now let's go for diffuse color, and we have, of course, our mesh element. Now I'm going to add this map to my teapot, and it's going to work like this. So you can pretty much create full randomization, or you can control it with your scatters. So scatters are going to work with your object's normals. What does it mean? It means that if you try to scatter your teapots on a sphere, the sphere is going to be fully populated all around it. The only limit that your objects are going to be bound with is the amount of scattered objects that you see here. So we've got this limit of 1 million objects, and the another one, which is random count to 1,000. Those safeguards are designed so that your computer doesn't blow up. And I mean it. Creating tons of objects, like millions of objects, is going to be quite stressful for your computer. At some point, you're not going to be even able to tell any difference between the teapots and just random noise. At this moment, I'm dealing with 100,000 objects. So it's not really that demanding at this moment, but you can tell that now those are actually forming almost a solid brick. So now it actually looks like cells. I'm going to make this teapot a little bit smaller, and this is going to show you how this works a bit better. We have millions of objects to work with, and it's going to allow you to save a lot of time with a lot of objects. This is not supposed to be used for gravel. This is very important, and it's best to use displacement maps for that. But you get the point. It's going to be a tremendous lifesaver with your work, because each time when you need to scatter out some objects, scatter is going to be there for you. So again, try to work with as many objects as you need, not with as many objects as you want. I know that it sounds a bit confusing, but try to limit yourself to as much as you can, because it's still going to be heavy on your RAM. It's still going to produce a lot of problems, especially since you're still learning. So remember to randomize and start small. Do not add million objects from the start. Do not add million trees for your first render. All you need probably is 1,100 trees for your overall background. It's going to probably be enough. So limit yourself. Remember that it's very demanding on your computer, especially if you use some kind of really dense mesh. Overall, it's going to be fun, so don't think that it's going to be a problem. I mean, we're not going for problems. As you can see, we're going to also scatter out. Okay, I need to actually decrease this a bit. We're going to scatter and use random scale, random rotation, random everything. So when we will be adding objects to our scene, you will see a lot of different changes. So let's say we're going to add 360 rotation, and still we're getting more and more randomization. It's a very useful tool. It's a fun tool to work with, but as I said, it's going to have its toll on your computer. So you may want to try to avoid abusing the amount of objects that you're going to use. The next thing that is also very helpful is to understand how your normals are going to work with your objects. Right now we have this plane, right? First of all, remember to check if your object's pivot is in the right place. Since we're working with a tree, we are probably supposed to have this pivot at least at the bottom of our bark. So let's just try to move this here. Since this is going to be well, scatter, so you can see that how this works. At this point, when I move this pivot, the whole system just pretty much gone crazy. What you need to do after you move your pivot with objects already added to your scatter, because it's obvious that you're going to have this problem from time to time, you need to reset X form of your objects. Now, it's not going to be obvious how to avoid all the problems, because this isn't just 3ds Max. We need to accept this. Now, let's just make this a bit smaller. So we're going to deal with 100% again. And okay, now we're actually forming a sphere instead of what we wanted. Again, this is a part of our. This is actually very interesting effect. I didn't expect this to look like that. So we have this effect now, but we want to make sure that our trees are standing. So they are those trees are rotated in X by 360. For now, I'm going to turn this off. Okay, it doesn't still look good. This is when you'd want to work with your align normal. This is going to be one of those tools that you will have to play a little bit with to see exactly what you are dealing with. Of course, it's best to start with a properly made object. So it's best to have your pivot already reset. Make sure that the blue arrow is pointing up, or at least it's going to be set up so that your object is going to be facing the way you actually want it to be positioned. So those arrows are going to help you a little bit to understand the position of your pivot. Okay, now let's reset the X form of this and see exactly what we're dealing with. Again, we have a bit too many of those trees, so let's try to avoid having so many. and let's go for, let's say, 1,000. Now we have this weird looking thing, right? Again, a pineapple. So yeah, or acorn, right? Now, once again, we're going to try to use this align normal to see exactly what we want. At this moment, if we use 0 with properly set up object, we can now use a little bit more random scattering and rotation, and we actually have what we wanted. Still not looking good, so I'm just going to scatter this out on some other object like plane. So it's going to be a bit more understandable. Let's add a bit more mesh, like 100 by 100, and of course noise modifier. So noise modifier is going to be super helpful with almost all of your exteriors, because it just adds this randomization pretty much for free. Okay, now let's go for the trees, and you can basically do the YouTuber challenge and plant 20 million trees right now, just like that. In our reality, it takes us a bit less time than in real life. So this is the basics of scatter systems and how do you define edges. Example, when scattering grass, it's going to be it's actually going to be in the videos. So the easiest approach is to use your objects maps, or I mean your objects mesh. So let's say that you want to create a border. The fastest and easiest way is just to split the mesh. So let's just select part of it, and I don't want the trees to grow in this area, so I'm just going to detach this, and now we have this effect. Again, it's not the ideal solution to it. It's not the perfect way to go about it, and we're going to actually scatter out the 3D models, not the flat planar objects. But you can see how it is going to be useful. For example, for most of the objects like grass, you probably will have to create some kind of extra maps. More about it in the videos that you're actually going to get in 10 minutes. So guys, I guess after this small introduction, we can go on and start adding grass to our exteriors. Some of you are already so advanced that you may want to start working with your scatter systems. Your today's homework is going to be something like this. Try to create a scatter system on the separate scene using whatever objects you want. Test it out. Try to see how the scatter behaves. It's something that you need to understand at least at some let's say reasonable level. You need to play around with it and have some fun with it. Remember that adding a lot of objects is going to clog your system, so don't go crazy. You can still go crazy, but don't go crazy. Overall, it's a good idea to just play around with it, and as a supplement to this webinar, please visit our YouTube channel where you can learn a little bit more about 1D scattering. There are 3 types of scatters, one which is useless, one which is very useful, and the third one which is often really ignored. So we created a video for our YouTube about the ignored one. So of course all of them actually have their own applications, but let's say that the Metro has this those, let's say, objects that follow some kind of lines, and just placing them manually would be actually a labor. So we can pretty much create a circle let's just go for not circle. I'm just going to create a quick cylinder to create a similar object. Now what we can do is create a scatter and quickly create a system. So for this time, we're going to use a distributed on objects, one of those splines that we have in our scene, and instance object is going to be our cylinder. At this moment, nothing happens because we need to change from 2D surfaces to 1D splines. And now this object is scattered out million times along the way. So what we need to do is add a little bit of spacing. I'm not sure what scale I'm dealing with, so I'm just going to go with a smaller radius on this object, and let's go for 200 on the spacing. Okay, it's still not enough, so we're going to go for 400. And this is how you can create multiple patches like pavements or any kind of foliage that you want to arrange in some kind of system quickly, easy, and with enough of randomization that you probably would expect from real life. So what you can do is add a little bit of a translation, rotation, and of course a scale. So let's go for random scale. So it's going to look a little bit more random. Let's add a lot of rotation, so it's going to go crazy. And now we can try to play a little bit more with it and actually add a bit of irregular patterns to it. So let's just add this one and make this longer, so we can see that the pattern is not going to repeat itself because we're going to add a bit of jitter. So let's just add it in. Okay, so let's say 15%. Okay, 50%, and you can see that all of those objects are actually moving around. Maybe we added just a bit too much scale randomization because we can barely see how this works, and I'm going to ignore the rotation. So the jitter is going to work like this. It's going to allow you to control how those objects are going to be spaced between one another on the 1D spline. Okay guys, this concludes our webinar. Thank you very much for your attention. I expect you to create at least 2 scatter systems, and once you're done, you can actually start experimenting with scatter systems in your scene. But on our next webinar, we will be exploring grass, and probably we're going to be introduced to trees. So don't add the grass yet. You don't have to do it. Try to play around with materials. Please try to model out the second, third, your fourth exterior if you need, because there's still time, and try to use as much of this time as you can, because we only have 3 webinars left, and well, then that's it. So guys, now hurry up, create your exteriors, and we're going to play a bit more with our scatters. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you in another webinar. Thank you very much again, and bye bye.